this is part one of how I build terrain. Taking a look at how I built it to this part, and this is the completed step one pre-painting. So taking you through some of the components that I use, here's a particle board or MDF. I use a 1/4 inch. It isn't the greatest, but it's what I had lying around in the garage, and I ground off the edges with a hand sander after I cut it to length that I needed. Some of the other things that I have here, this actual cathedral is Gothic ruins from Pegasus Hobbies, and I've added on here, it's modular, it comes with modular bits, you can build in any way you'd like, but I build it in its more of its classical style. And then I dremelled out the sides here, which you'll see me do in a minute. And then I took a Forge World Ligtning Stike Fighter, and there were a few pieces missing from it, so I've repurposed it into crashing into this cathedral. And I've taken a few pieces of guitar string, the low E string, and cut those up and glued them on to make it look like cabling. Electronic cabling was pulled apart. And then I've added a bunch of bits around it, including las guns and some sandbags and bits and pieces on the inside here, including popsicle sticks that are broken up to make it look like floorboards. Then I took different grit. I actually used kitty litter, non-used kitty litter, new, and put that down with PVA glue and also some other grit. So I'll show you how I went apart and did that. But the thing I really like about doing these scenery pieces is not just line of sight blocking terrain or something else like that, but to build a story. And it's very clear when looking at this Gothic cathedral that a battle has happened here, and guns were left, and vehicles crashed and been fought over since. To claim this ground back. And I think building that story, we spend so much time painting our miniatures that it's nice to have a story piece like this as you're moving them and playing. So sit back, enjoy yourselves. It's going to be a long multi-part series, but I really want to show you some of the tips and tricks that I use to make this. So sit back and enjoy. And step one is arranging your model, dry fitting it, so you can really get a visual of how things are going to lay out and how you're going to paint it and how you're going to model it. So let's go through some of my components here. I have this is from Pegasus Hobbies. This is one of their Gothic ruin sets. It's all these little nubs that they have on here is because it's a modular set. It's designed to go with anything in their Gothic ruin range. But I'm building this traditional as it was on the box. Just with a few additions. Underneath it, I've put on just a 1/4 inch MDF or particle board, not MDF, this is a particle board or a fiber board that I put underneath here. I just happen to have it lying around in the garage. You can use anything that's an 1/8 inch or a 1/4 inch, just that doesn't have a ton of warpage to it. I actually don't like this material as much because it's a bit fibrous and splits apart. But, you know, it's scenery, and this is just its base. So I sanded off the edges after I cut it just with a palm sander, just so it doesn't have any sharp edges here. After I kind of guessed and cut out the approximate size. But it gives it a nice structure to make this diorama on. And then if you notice here, some of you will recognize that is an old Forge World Ligtning Stike Fighter. It's got some missing pieces, some of the canopies missing, and a few other things. So we're going to repurpose this Forge World model, still a really cool model, but we're going to repurpose it to look like some faulty piloting, and he's crashed into this Gothic cathedral. So with that, I'm now going to finish clipping up and gluing on some of these pieces here and arranging this, and we'll do some of that. Okay, now I've glued on all the little bits and bobs, the gargoyles and everything else that came with the set. One of my gripes actually for this set is it doesn't have enough little pieces if you don't want to put the gargoyles on. Now, I could just cover that up with a putty, but I'm actually just going to try and there will be a few areas that I can clean up later if I have to, but for the most part, it's a good set. I like it. But now it's actually getting the orientation and gluing it to my MDF, and I have to keep that in mind. I've kind of sized it out, putting the vehicle on there, and I've kind of sized it out, and I'm kind of lining my center pillar up with this little fleck here. I could mark it out, but hey, this isn't science class. So I'm going to try and carefully pick this up, glue all the bottoms, and then carefully set it back down and not screw this up. Okay, you'll see that I use super glue, so I also just sprayed an activator on around it just to try and get it to set up and secure in that position. Since it has all these spindly legs sticking out to the side, I didn't want this to move on me, and I'm kind of impatient. So the next thing to do, now that this is secured on there and all the things are on it, is to start getting the layout for putting the crashed plane on. So as I'm looking at this and as I'm sizing it up, I think I need to take this one down on an angle as I put the plane kind of skidding to a stop in here, because that's too abrupt. So there's lots of ways that you can cut this, as you know, but I'll tell you what, if you've got power tools, why not use them? So I'm using a Dremel tool here, just with a reinforced cutting disc. And it does okay. There are, I'm sure, are better things out there, and if you know what those are, please comment below. But it does a pretty good job. It actually kind of melts it a little bit, which I'm not too keen on, but it does the job for me and gets through. So also, please be smarter than me and throw safety glasses on when you're doing this, because hot plastic in the eye is awesome. Okay, after the Dremel, and as you probably saw there, it melts the plastic pretty quick with that reinforced cutting tool. And one of the problems with that is, as you can see, I screwed up in this corner. It really started to melt the actual edge. I was able to grab the molten plastic and move it back into position. Highly unadvised, but yeah, you can see some of the. Maybe you can't. Some of the piece of plastic here is just melted up. So, but I'm going to save this cut off piece and apply that because it'll look great, I think. What we're going to do now is position this in here, and luckily I screwed up on the melted the corner that this aircraft is crashing through. So with that, I'm going to keep these wings off, I think, and we're just going to position this. But something to help me do that is going to be air dry clay. So this air dry clay should, what I'm going to do is try and make a bed for this aircraft to sit in, and I'll probably add a little bit of mounds around. And also, I'm going to add some sandbags and just some of these other pieces to try and build the scenery, make it look more of a diorama, look a bit more lived in. Okay, the clay is dry, the air dry clay, with how thick I put it on, took some time. I've added some more bits and bobs to it, which I'll show you in a second here. But I just want to show you that I'm adding some popsicle sticks for some wood planking. It's really just to break up the texture of this board. And I'm also going to add some old guitar string. This is 10, and this is a low E string. And I'm just cutting this up into tiny bits here, and you'll see what I'm going to do with that in a minute. So what I'm doing here now is we've got this crash playing. I haven't glued this down yet, but these I've super glued them in. And if you look here, I've also got a las cannon sitting out right here. Now, just gluing these down into the ground, we're going to add some flock and stuff around them, but just putting them here, it looks just like I glued bits of a broken model down. So what I'm going to do is add some of these metal pieces to these to make it look like it was sheared off in the explosion, and these are electronic cabling or something like that holding it. What I'm going to do is just use some super glue, and it's pretty simple. First I'm going to throw some activator on. If you don't have activator with you, I actually believe it's baking soda works really well for this stuff too. So we're going to look at where we think that the connectors would be, and I think it's probably going to be on the top side of this one. And let's see, maybe we just throw a cabling out along here, along the wing, and get this up, there we go, and throw some out across there, and maybe hopefully one off there. Okay, and then what I do is I just grab some of my super glue and I glob it on as best I can to one of these ends, and a nice generous amount, don't be sparing here. And I just stick that in. Oops. This one might be easier if I hold it. You know, when you get only so much glue on your hands, it just kind of falls every which way. But here we go. Glove that up. And we're just going to stick that right along there. See if you can see that. Okay, now that I have got my wires and all these pieces down, I remove the actual plane from the wreckage. As you can see, this air dry clay is dry, but it's cracked quite a bit. So what I'm going to do now is I just mixed in some PVA glue and a little bit of water. Not quite a 1-to-1 ratio, but enough to let this flow. I'm just going to dump this in here and start to spread this around to give this, yeah, that's really not even close to a 1-to-1 now that I'm looking at it. But it's kind of what I want, because it's going to get down into all these cracks and crevices and really start to fill in some of the voids that and hold this clay together, as well as hold the, start to get ready to accept my basing material. Okay, now that you've gotten PVA glue and your PVA water mix, you can see in some of the places the mix was too light. It was more water than PVA, so I just went back with the actual glue bottle and smeared some of that back on there just to give it a nice coating. It doesn't need to be even everywhere, because that's not how real ground is anyway. But just get it on there. And I would say that we're doing a quick and dirty method, but really, I mean, this is rather involved. But get kitty litter, preferably unused. And if you can get sand from outside, right now it's a little too cold for us, but if you can get sand outside, that's great.